Hello, this is the One Idjit's Thoughts On podcast. The Idjit is in. I'm Paul Mackey. March was an interesting month in our household. There was a GI illness that hit pretty much all of us, including some of the pets, and it was not pretty. And then this weekend, when I was all set to record, there was taxes and other things just keep coming up in general. I've also been writing a bunch of trivia recently, some of which will be repurposed in the August Dog Days of Trivia series. I wrote 37 questions for the guys over at Throwback Trivia Takedown. 37! Yes, in a row. So while I made some good progress looking towards August, it's time to get back to some regular episodes of this show. And today I'll be starting out with Whiz Kids, episode 14, The Lollypop Gang Strikes Back, originally aired February 25th, 1984. That day of note, I couldn't really find any fascinating news stories for the day, so we'll go right to the charts. Billboard either discontinued or didn't run the video games chart the week I'm looking at, so we'll look at the video discs chart. On the top 5, 4 were available as both Laserdisc and the older CED format. Number 5 was War Games. Number 4, Octopussy. Number 3, the making of Michael Jackson's Thriller. Number 2, Tootsie, which is the aforementioned title that was only on CED. And the number 1 video disc was Raiders of the Lost Ark. These discs tended to be priced around $30, which is equivalent to close to $100 today, but still cheaper than many VHS tapes, based on what was called the rental pricing model that discouraged consumers from buying their own copies of movies on VHS. The other thing I'm remembering looking at this is the long theatrical runs movies used to have. On my Seeing Things episodes, Raiders is in the top 5 box office in September 1981, and here it is in early 1984 at the top of the video discs. I didn't do the VHS chart, but it is similarly placed on that list as well. It took a bit of looking around, but the 80s generally marked the period where release windows were compressing. In 1979, it could be 5 years between a theatrical run and TV airing. In 1983, more like 3 years between the big screen and home video, compressing already to as little as 6 months by 1985. Just something I noticed and remembered from when I was a kid. Now back to the charts. At the box office, Unfaithful Yours was number 5. Number 4 was Terms of Endearment in its 15th week of release. Number 3 was Lassiter. Number 2, Blame It on Rio. And the number 1 movie was Footloose in its second week of release after debuting at number 1 the previous week. On the Billboard Hot 100, all but one of these songs was on the way up this week. Number 5, Michael Jackson's Thriller. Number 4, Girls Just Wanna Have Fun by Cyndi Lauper. Number 3, 99 Luft Balloons by Nena. Number 2, Culture Club's Karma Chameleon, knocked out of the top spot by Jump by Van Halen. In the UK, according to Music Week, the top 5 singles were number 5, My Ever-Changing Moods by the Style Council, number 4, Queen with Radio Gaga, number 3, Doctor Doctor by the Thompson Twins, number 2, 99 Luft Balloons by Nena, and number 1 continued to be Relax by Frankie Goes to Hollywood, the final week of its 5-week run at number 1. Alright, a brief summary of this episode. A masked group of 3 people, 2 men and 1 woman, rob a liquor store at gunpoint, taking $500 of the money, cuffing the clerk to the counter, buying something, and spray painting LOL on the window outside. Later, a trio of senior citizens at the bus stop asked the cop outside what happened. I'm not sure if the audience is meant to see them as the robbers at this point, but I had worked it out pretty easily. Inside, Farley watches as Sergeant Griffin questions the clerk. The gang spoke Spanish, stole some of the money and loaves of bread, then bought a lollipop, said something about a piano, and left. Farley suggests the LOL on the window is for the Lollypop Gang. At the Royal Gardens retirement home, Teddy gives Sid trouble over saying that the clerk's wife plays piano in Spanish, but Sid says he has to practice the Spanish that he's learning somewhere. They take out the loot and put away the gun, pointing out that it is not loaded. Meanwhile, at the Athena Society, Carson Marsh shows Farley his account at the Library of Congress has been closed and he is marked as deceased. Farley checks Marsh's pulse. Marsh says that all over the government computer systems, they all report that he is dead, and it started with Social Security stopped sending him his checks. Carson says someone at SSA called it a glitch, but nobody really understands the system. Farley may know someone who might understand the system. Farley gets Richie to agree to look at it. At Royal Gardens, the robbers are distributing sandwiches and money to their fellow residents, a sort of Robin Hood scheme. At Athena, Richie finds that Marsh's records show him as current and all the checks have been issued, but he is both alive and dead in the system. Mr. Sellers at the SSA sees Richie looking via computer and boots him off the system, changing the password. Marsh gives Richie the name of the director of the Southern California division of the SSA. Richie and the kids enter the SSA office, claiming to be consultants with the GSA, Computer Engineering Group. While the others talk with Mr. Sellers, dropping Bill Markham's name, Richie is busy building a backdoor into the system he could use from home later on. Farley gets word from a street contact, Ramon, that the LOL robbers are small time, and he also notes the same things that Farley found odd, that they don't hurt anybody and only take part of the loot. Richie looks through the SSA records and finds that March lives on Berkeley Street, but no street, avenue, court, or any other road named Berkeley currently exists in the SSA database. Farley points out to Sergeant Griffin that all the mini-marts robbed were on a major bus line and no getaway car has been observed, and that one market remains in the affected area that hasn't been robbed. Griffin scoffs at the idea and tells Farley to check it out himself, which he then does. He witnesses a robbery and then sees the gang unmasked nearby and talks to them. He wants a story, and they tell him why they do what they do. They take him to the Royal Gardens and he meets the other residents. It seems all the residents' Social Security checks just stopped coming. Then they challenge Farley. Is he turning them in? After the mid-show ad break, Marsh calls Richie, thanking him effusively for all he did to get the troubles resolved, and hangs up before Richie can protest that he's done nothing toward a fix yet. Farley presents all the details to Lieutenant Quinn and Sergeant Griffin and says he wants 24 hours to talk to the SSA about the problems the seniors are facing, and time to talk to the mini-marts about their plight. Quinn leaves the decision in Griffin's hands, and Griffin decides to make the arrests. He and several carloads of cops raid the old folks' home. Farley talks to Sellers at SSA, who gives him forms for the seniors to fill out, saying the errors could be rectified in 2 to 12 weeks. Farley next turns to Richie, and there's an obvious possible tie to Marsh's recent situation. They look at all the records, and the records show the residence files were closed out on the same date, but the funds continued to be issued. The retirement home is on a street called Berkeley, which makes it look like the same error that struck Marsh has hit all of these people as well. Farley bails out the Lollypop Gang and asks Irene to put them up for the night. They find that the funds from all the missing checks are transferring to an offshore account. They come up with a scheme to get Sellers away from the office so they can investigate, and Richie proposes they mark Sellers as deceased in the banking systems. Sellers finds that his wife's charge card stops working and the loan company is going to repo his car. The bank says his account has been terminated. The payroll computer also thinks he's dead. He heads down to the bank to complain. Farley calls in the Royal Gardens residents to stage a protest and also calls Quinn, hoping Richie can find the necessary evidence hacking in the SSA office during all that chaos. Jeremy finds a card for the Bahamian Bank in Sellers' Rolodex, while Richie is looking for the link between Sellers and the bank. They work out that Sellers has been depositing the funds offshore while paperwork goes through, and then returning the funds to the people later on when they've already faced the hardship of losing expected funds. Meanwhile, he's collected over $100,000 interest for himself. Quinn arrives, and as the arrest goes down, Bill Markham from GSA shows up. The kids were using his name in the earlier ruse. He congratulates Quinn on the sting operation, but asks that next time Quinn uses Markham's name, he also keeps Markham in the loop. And my favorite line:
We're a crack inspection team from the GSA, assigned to inspect existing government computer systems.
You're a little young, aren't you?
Young? We're almost past our prime. The real computer geniuses of our age are 12, 13 years old.
All right, the Who Is query. I will point out Kenneth Mars as Sellers from the producers in Young Frankenstein, but this week I'm going to look a little bit at each member of the Lollypop Gang, as I can't narrow it down to just one. Elisha Cook played Sid, the man who was practicing his Spanish during the heists. Elisha Cook Jr. began his career in vaudeville and was soon cast by Eugene O'Neill in his play Ah Wilderness for a 2-year run on Broadway. His film career began with a role in the adaptation of a play called Her Unborn Child. IMDb shows a poster for the film which calls it an astounding talking picture. He played roles in 21 film noir movies, most notably The Maltese Falcon, as Wilmer Cook, and in The Big Sleep supporting Bogart and Bacall. Later films included Rosemary's Baby, The Great Northfield, Minnesota Raid, Pat Garrett and Billy the Kid, and Electroglide in Blue. He performed extensively on TV, including Batman, the original Night Stalker movie that later became the Kolchak series, The Odd Couple, Beretta, Night Court, The A-Team, Simon & Simon, Magnum P.I., and Alf. Magnum and Alf were the last shows where he worked before his death, the two-part finale of Magnum P.I. being his final appearance. When he passed away in 1995, he was the last surviving main cast member from the Maltese Falcon. Whitman Mayo, who played Teddy, was best known for playing Grady on Sanford & Son. He typically played characters older than his actual age. As Grady, he was in his early 40s playing 60s, and in this episode of Whiz Kids, his actual age was 54. He worked a variety of roles in the 80s and 90s, including shows like 227, A Different World, Family Matters, Martin and Keenan and Kel. Sylvia Sidney played Dolly. At various points during her early film career, she played opposite Humphrey Bogart, Gary Cooper, Spencer Tracy, Henry Fonda, and Cary Grant. In her later TV career, she appeared on WKRP in Cincinnati, Starsky and Hutch, The Love Boat, Super Train, 8 is Enough, Magnum P.I., Dear John, and Diagnosis Murder. She featured prominently in 2 Tim Burton films as the gruff-voiced Juno in Beetlejuice, and later as Grandma Florence in Mars Attacks. Her final role was as the travel agent at the beginning of every episode of the Fantasy Island revival in 1998. Artifactoids. Okay, the La Paz liquor store that is held up in the opening is at the intersection of Pass Avenue and Magnolia in Burbank, the street address being 4101 West Magnolia. The store is still there today, although it looks like the sign lettering was probably updated at some point in the 90s, I'm guessing. I'm suspecting it's a former Denny's, as you can see in this episode, and it still looks very much the same. I looked at interior photos on Yelp and Google reviews, and it was the same location for the exterior and interior shots of this show, which is not always the case. It is roughly 3 blocks from the Evergreen Studios that was seen in the Return of the Big Rocker episode 7 of this series. I figured that the fact that it still exists under the same name, and was so near that other location, that was enough facts to make me make it an artifactoid. But then I noticed another offering under the search results when I was narrowing it down from the Google Lens results. It was a Rockford Files shooting location. So I decided to take a peek at when the episode in question falls in the series, figuring the span from 1974 to 1979 meant I could be waiting a while before I get to that episode. But it turns out that Gear Jammers is a 2-part episode in Season 2 of the Rockford Files, and I will be, in fact, discussing the pair of episodes after the next episode that I watch, Season 2, Episode 3 and 4. What worked? I think this plot would still be relevant today, though I think by now a show would dispense with the Whiz Kids entirely and have the senior citizens do their Robin Hood act via hacking the system themselves. What didn't work? I'm not sure what the root cause is, but the tech is slowly disappearing from the show. I suspect the writing was on the wall for the companies that so enthusiastically offered up their cutting-edge tech early on. If the show is getting low numbers, why put in the effort to get your interesting new products on the show? It could also be the writers were having trouble finding ways to introduce new tech. In any case, there's a few scenes with Richie typing text on a monitor, and that's all in this episode. So next time, Whiz Kids Episode 15, The Sufi Project, which I assume will have nothing to do with the Sufi sect of Islam, but I suppose anything is possible. And before I go, I just wanted to let you know that Jack Mangan's Artist Support Charity has now officially started. You can go to supportlifeandmusic.org for details, whether you are interested in helping or if you are an artist who needs help. Happy hunting! You've been listening to the One Idjit's Thoughts On podcast, produced by Paul Mackey in association with Nimlas Studios. Any short clips of audio from shows is included under fair use for commentary purposes, and copyright for that content remains with its original copyright holders. The theme song is Too Good by Jack Mangan and is used by his generous permission. One Idjit's Thoughts is produced under a Creative Commons Attribution, Non-Commercial, No Derivatives 4.0 International License. You can find more episodes of this podcast and many other fine podcasts at nimlas.org. You can contact me by emailing idjitcastpodcast@gmail.com or commenting on episodes at nimlas.org. So, seller's offshore account number was NCC1710. Either someone wanted to use the Enterprise 1701 and got it mixed up, or they were referencing an obscure ship called the Congo, which appeared in a 1975 Starfleet technical manual published by Ballantine Books. I might be missing something because a lot of fan attention has subsequently surrounded the Congo, and it was a key starship in a web series from the mid-2010s. This is in that after closing, because it also could be a coincidence, but NCC followed by 4 digits on this kind of show? Seems obvious.